Chapter 9. Before leaving the apartment for his date with Alicoque Wright, Quillerin telephoned David Lyke to inquire about Mrs. Tate's funeral. "You should have been there," said the decorator. "There was enough blue blood to float a ship. All the old guard who knew Tate's pappy and grandpappy. You never saw so many pince-nez and Queen Mary hats." How was Tate taking it? "I wish I could say he looked pale and haggard, but with that healthy flush of his, he always looks as if he'd just won at tennis." "Why weren't you there?" "I was working on a cover story, and this afternoon I moved into Harry Norton's apartment." "Good, we're neighbors," David said. "Why don't you come over Saturday night and meet Natalie Norton? She just got back from Reno, and I'm having a few people in for drinks." Quillerin recalled the excellence of the buffet at the decorator's last party and accepted the invitation with alacrity. After that, he prepared a hasty dinner for Coco, half a can of red salmon garnished with a raw egg yolk, and said, "Be a good cat. I'll be home late and fix you a snack." At 6 o'clock sharp, he met Alicoque Wright under the City Hall clock. Her punctuality had an architectural precision. She was wearing a curious medley of green skirt, turquoise top, and blue cape in a weave that reminded Quillerin of dining-room chair seats somewhere in his forgotten past. "I made it myself, out of upholstery samples," she said, peering at him from under a quantity of glossy brown hair that enveloped her head, shoulders, and much of her face. He took her to the press club for dinner, aware that he was being observed by all the regulars at the bar and would have to account the next day for his taste in women. Nevertheless, it had to be the press club. He had a charge account there, and payday was not until Friday. He ushered his date. She asked Quillerin to call her Cokie, upstairs to the main dining room, where the atmosphere was quieter, and the rolls were sprinkled with poppy seeds. "Have a cocktail?" Quillerin invited. "I'm on the wagon myself, but I'll have a lemon and seltzer to keep you company." Cokie looked keenly interested. "Ooh, why aren't you drinking?" "It's a long story, and the less said about it, the better." He put a matchbook under one table leg. All the press club tables had a built-in wobble. "I'm on a yoga kick myself," she said. "No liquor, no meat. But I'll make us one of nature's own cocktails, if you'll order the ingredients and 2 champagne glasses." When the tray arrived, she poured a little cream into each glass, filled it with ginger ale, and then produced a small wooden device from her handbag. "I carry my own nutmeg and grate it fresh," she said, dusting the surface of the drinks with brown spice. "Nutmeg is a stimulant. The Germans put it in everything." Quillerin took a cautious sip. The drink had a bite. It was like Cokie, cool and smooth, with an unexpected pepperiness. "How did you decide to become an architect?" he asked. "Maybe you haven't noticed," said Cokie, "but there are more architects named Wright than there are judges named Murphy. We seem to gravitate to the drafting board. However, the name is getting me nowhere." She stroked her long hair lovingly. "I may have to give up the struggle and find a husband." "It shouldn't be difficult." "I'm glad you're so confident." She set her jaw and ground some more nutmeg on her cocktail. "Tell me what you think of the decorating profession after 2 weeks in the velvet jungle." "They seem to be likable people." "They're children. They live in a world of play." A shadow passed over Cokie's face, the sliver of face that was visible. "And just like children, they can be cruel." She studied the grains of nutmeg clinging to the inside of her empty glass and, cat-like, darted out a pink tongue to lick it clean. A man walked past the table and said, "Hi there, Cokie." She looked up abruptly. "Well, hello," she said, with meaning in the inflection. "You know him?" Quillerin asked in surprise. "We've met," said Cokie. "I'm getting hungry. May we order?" She looked at the menu and asked for brook trout with a large garnish of parsley and a small salad. Quillerin compared her taut figure with his own well-padded belt line and felt guilty as he ordered bean soup, a hefty steak, and a baked potato with sour cream. "Are you divorced?" Koki asked suddenly. Quillerin nodded. "That's cool. Where do you live?" "I moved into the villa veranda today." He waited for her eyes to open wide, and then added in a burst of honesty, "The apartment belongs to a friend who's gone abroad." "Do you like living alone?" "I don't live alone," said Quillerin. "I have a cat, a Siamese." "I adore cats," Koki squealed. "What's your cat's name?" Quillerin beamed at her. People who really appreciated animals always asked their names. "His real name is Kauko Kung, but he's called Coco for everyday purposes. I considered myself a dog man until I met Coco. He's a remarkable animal. Perhaps you remember the murder on Blenheim Place last spring? Coco is the cat who was involved. And if I told you some of his intellectual feats, you wouldn't believe me." "Oh, I'd believe anything about cats. They're uncanny." "Sometimes I'm convinced Coco senses what's going to happen." "It's true. Cats tune in with their whiskers." "That's what I've been told," said Quillerin, preening his mustache absently. "Coco always gives the impression that he knows more than I do. And he has clever ways of communicating. Not that he does anything uncat-like, you understand. Yet somehow he gets his ideas across. I'm not explaining this very well." "I know exactly what you mean." Quillerin looked at Koki with appreciation. These were matters he could not discuss with his friends at the Fluxion. With their beagles and boxers as a frame of reference, how could they understand about cats? In this one area of his life, he experienced a kind of loneliness. But Koki understood. Her mischievous green eyes had mellowed into an expression of rapport. He reached over and took her hand, the slender, tapering hand that was playing tiddlewinks with stray poppy seeds on the tablecloth. He said, "Have you ever heard of a cat eating spider webs or glue? Coco has started licking gummed envelopes. One day, he chewed up $1 worth of postage stamps." "I used to have a cat who drank soap suds," Koki said. "They're individualists. Does Coco scratch furniture? It was noble of your friend to let you move into his apartment with a cat." "Coco does all his scratching on an old, unabridged dictionary," Quillerin said with a note of pride. "How literary of him!" "It's not really an old dictionary," he explained. "It's the new edition. The man Coco used to live with bought it for himself, and then decided he preferred the old edition, so he gave the new one to the cat for a scratching pad. I admire men who admire cats." Quillerin lowered his voice and spoke confidentially. "We have a game we play with this dictionary. Coco exercises his claws, and I add a few words to my vocabulary. This is something I wouldn't want to get around the press club, you understand." Koki looked at him mistily. "I think you're wonderful," she said. "I'd love to play the game sometime." When Quillerin arrived home that evening, it was late, and he was exhausted. Girls like Koki made him realize he was not so young as he used to be. He unlocked the door of his apartment and was groping for the light switch when he saw 2 red sparks in the darkened living room. They glowed with a supernatural light. He had seen them before, and he knew what they were, but they always gave him a scare. "Coco," he said, "is that you?" He flipped the lights on, and the mysterious red lights in Coco's eyes were extinguished. The cat approached with arched back, question-mark tail, and the back-swept whiskers of disapproval. He made vehement one-note complaints. "I'm sorry," said Quillerin. "Did you think you were abandoned? You'll never believe this, but we went for a walk. A long walk. That's what lady architects like to do on a date. take you for a walk looking at buildings. I'm bushed. He sank into a chair and kicked off his shoes without untying the laces. For 3 hours, we've been looking at architecture. Insensitive massing, inefficient site planning, trite fenestration. Coco was howling impatiently at his knee, and Quillerin picked up the cat, laid him across his shoulder, and patted the sleek fur. He could feel the muscles struggling beneath the pelt, and Coco wriggled away and jumped down. Is something wrong? Quillerin asked. Yow, yow, said Coco. He ran to the Spanish chest that housed the stereo set. It was a massive carved piece, built close to the floor, resting on 4 bun-shaped feet. Coco plumped to the floor in front of it, stretched one foreleg, and vainly tried to reach under the chest. His brown tail tensed in a skimter curve. Quillerin uttered a weary moan. He knew the cat had lost his homemade mouse, a bouquet of dried mint leaves tied in the toe of an old sock. He also knew there would be no sleeping that night until the mouse was retrieved. He looked for something to poke under the chest. Broomstick? There was no broom in the kitchen closet. The maids evidently used their own sweeping equipment. Fireplace poker? There were no fireplaces at the villa veranda. Umbrella? If Norton owned one, he had taken it to Europe. Fishing rod? Golf club? Tennis racket? The man seemed to have no active hobbies. Back scratcher? Long-handled shoehorn? Clarinet? Discarded crutch? With Coco at his heels, yowling imperious Siamese commands, Quillerin searched the premises. He thought wistfully of all the long, slender implements he could use. Tree branch, fly swatter, buggy whip. Eventually, he lowered himself to the floor. Lying flat, he reached under the low chest and gingerly extracted a penny, a gold earring, an olive pit, a crumpled scrap of paper, several dust balls, and finally, a familiar gray wad of indefinite shape. Coco pounced on his mouse, sniffed it once without much interest, and gave it a casual whack with his paw. It went back under the Spanish chest, and Coco sauntered away to get a drink of water before retiring for the night. But Quillerin stayed up smoking his pipe and thinking about many things. Cokie and nutmeg cocktails, gracious abodes and Mrs. Mitty's lace collar, buggy whips, and the situation in Muggy Swamp. Once he went to the wastebasket and fished out the crumpled paper he had found beneath the Spanish chest. There was only a name on it. Arnie Torvaldsen. He dropped it in the basket again. The gold earring he tossed in the desk drawer with the paper clips.